Sometimes writing is like a ritual, and we are changed. Thank you for the ritual. Next, I can't help but feel overwhelmed with pride and awe and joy and admiration to welcome Paige S to the stage with her book, Queer Rock Love, which will be published by Transgress Press.
Sometime in August it'll be out.
Sometime in August. Okay.
I wanted to echo what Dreama said about Abe, because I feel like a midwife is the perfect word to describe what Abe has been to my book as well. And she's also like, it's like if you had your dream mom who is super excited about like your every endeavor. That's what it's like to be in Abe's workshop. And I also want to say, I have this collection of vintage aprons, and I only wear them on Mother's Day, because it's the only time it ever seems appropriate. But this is the first time I've ever worn this one that's like a raincoat, but it seemed like this is a really good day for it. Or it seems like if you were having an SM party, it would be. So my co-mother and I, Katie, are about to celebrate 12 years of motherhood next week. This excerpt that I'm going to read is about a time when our son Waylon was 2 years old, and Katie was deathly ill, and my mother came to visit. When my mother announced that she was coming for a visit, all the things I'd been ignoring in order to focus on the crisis at hand began to scream for my attention. The unmowed weeds in the front yard, the discarded toys on the porch, but most especially the moths. Our house was plagued by pantry moths. Every time I opened a cabinet, I was greeted by the fluttering of small brown wings. When I went to make pancakes or cornbread, I found them burrowed deep inside canisters of dry goods. An ever-increasing colony hung from the tops of the shelves like tiny bats in a kitchen-sized cave. I guessed I could dispatch the unwanted visitors with bug spray, but I didn't like the idea of toxic chemicals clinging to my foodstuffs any more than I liked moths. With Mom's visit looming, I visited the eco-friendly hardware store for advice. They sent me home with a tray of sticky glue that was less like a moth death trap and more like a gentle form of population control. When I opened the pantry and peered around for the best place to put it, a flurry of unflappable moths flaunted their feathery wings in my face. Cowed, I retreated to simpler tasks, like shoving toys into the closet and mopping the floor. Then I dialed Mom's cell. "I'll pick you up at the airport," I told her, "but we'll have to swing back by the office because I have a meeting at 3. "Oh, is there a refrigerator at your office?" "Uh-huh. Why do you ask?" "I'm bringing a frozen chicken in my suitcase." "Mom, we have chickens in Texas." "They were on sale at Bash's'. I'll just take a cab to your house." I braced myself for the coming cyclone. When I was growing up, my mother made pickles and preserves and applesauce from scratch. She baked cookies and decorated cakes. She sent me and my sister to elementary school in handmade gingham prairie skirts and tucked us into bed wearing home-sewn nightgowns that matched her own. During the rare periods when she wasn't working outside the home, she'd lie in wait for me after school, eager to list her accomplishments. "I cleaned the cobwebs off the ceiling, and then I baked muffins with leftover cereal and reorganized the linen closet." Overwhelmed by the sheer force of her domestic industry, I would flee to my room, hoping that homework could save me from home improvement. My mother's homemaking skills were forged in the kitchens of her Mormon girlhood, but her perfectionism was honed in the aftermath of her parents' apostasy. My grandparents left the Church of the Latter-day Saints when my mother was 12, and after that, every aspect of their lives became a potential reflection of their religious choices. If they failed in business or in love, in cleanliness or in good citizenship, their hard times might be interpreted as God's wrath. My grandmother was determined not to give any grist to the Mormon gossip mill. She kept her kitchen sparkling clean and set the table with starched linens. She eschewed hard liquor and scrambled to hide the coffee pot whenever one of her 7 sisters pulled into the driveway. She refused to let my mother wear makeup and dressed her only daughter in modest, muted colors. As Mom grew older, she chafed under this regime of propriety. She bought a racy leopard print belt to accentuate her bland beige clothes. She escaped to college, married a Catholic, and attended consciousness-raising sessions. But she could never quite silence Grandma's insistent voice in her head. Judge first, judge often. Yes, lest ye be judged. When I arrived home from work that evening, I was greeted by the soothing aroma of roasted chicken and the disturbing sight of my 60-year-old mother on her knees wiping the floor of my kitchen. Mom, I just mopped yesterday. There's just so much sand, she said, pushing a strand of perfectly coiffed blonde hair back into place. I felt a twinge of defensiveness, but I pushed it aside. I didn't want to devolve into a bratty teenager the moment my mother arrived. Later, after Mom tucked Waylon into bed, I asked if I could make her a cup of tea. That would be nice, she said, taking off her shoes and curling up in an armchair in the living room. I knew that this was what she had really come to Texas for, a little quality mother-daughter time. I was exhausted, but I owed her that much, especially since she'd scrubbed my floors. I handed her a cup of lemon tea and settled into the couch. Mom proceeded to fill me in on the latest exploits of her friends and neighbors back home in Fountain Hills, Arizona. Many of these updates were united by a single theme. People made poor choices. I told her that you have to mix the dry ingredients separately, but she didn't listen. Her cookies came out like salty little hockey pucks. I stifled a yawn. In the flood of minutia, I had lost track of the identity of this particular baking bimbo. Oh well, Mom concluded, giving the stoic little shrug that said she was powerless in the face of other people's stupidity. I thought we might be about to wrap up, but just as I started to say goodnight, she shifted her tone to indicate that it was time for a real heart-to-heart. So, how are you? It was a scene we played out so often, I'd come to think of our roles in terms of an old Peanuts comic strip. Mom was silver-tongued Lucy, enticing me to kick the football, and I was dim-witted, gullible Charlie Brown. Come on, Chuck, she said, just kick the ball. I promise I won't move it this time. It always happened the same way. Mom would encourage me to share what was really going on in my life, and I would open up. As soon as I got really present, really vulnerable, then all of a sudden, whomp, she'd change the subject. It wasn't her fault. She'd grown up in a family that was terminally uncomfortable with messy feelings. I knew she was hungry for a deeper connection. I could see it in her eyes and feel it in her insistent attempts at mother-daughter bonding. But as soon as anything unscripted started to unfold, she fled to more familiar territory. Her list of personal accomplishments, household hints, and complaints. Now her unanswered question hung in the air. It was so tempting to unburden myself, to say that Katie was really bad, and I wasn't sure how much longer we could keep it together with the kid and work and new symptoms showing up every day. I'm not gonna lie, I said, swallowing. It's been difficult. She tilted her head and made a listening face. But I think we're managing, I said. That's good, sweetie. I worry about you. You know, I could get some spray that would take care of those moths. No, I'm trying not to use pesticides. I got a glue trap. It's just gonna take a while, I said, trying to sound confident. Thanks for the yummy dinner, Mom. I headed upstairs with a mixture of relief and regret. I was glad I hadn't spilled my guts, but I still wished things were different. I still wished I had the kind of mom who could comfort me in times of need. 2 nights later, I was awakened by a clattering sound downstairs. I looked at the clock on my bedside table. It was 5 a.m. I started to fall back asleep, but then I heard the noise again. There was definitely something going on in the kitchen. I pulled myself out of bed and tiptoed to the top of the stairs. A horrifying smell, a mix of chemicals and perfume, drifted up to meet me. "Mom," I said, charging down the steps, "what are you doing?" She was standing in front of the open pantry in her pink nightgown, a graveyard of dead moths gathered at her feet. "It's organic," she said preemptively. She was holding something behind her back like a 5-year-old caught with a forbidden cookie. "It's organic!" I held out my hand, and she reluctantly handed over the bottle of Raid Earth Expressions. "No," I said sternly. Mom looked extremely sheepish. I averted my eyes like a sullen teenager. "God, Mom, why can't you understand me? Do you even listen when I'm talking to you? You always think you know best. Now I have to get Waylon out of here and wipe down the kitchen and all the cans." And as I was enumerating all the extra work she created, a traitorous feeling poked up through the asphalt of my ire. At least the goddamn moths are gone. Relief blossomed into amusement. Even in my anger, I had to admit, it was kind of hilarious to think of Mom spraying under cover of darkness like a nightgown-wearing ninja. I felt a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. "I was just trying to help," she said quietly. "I know, Mom." I put down the Raid and gave her a hug. "I know."